Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Season 2 of the Rule 34 podcast. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my fellow co-host,
Dominic Castello.
Alright, Dom, so it's been about a week. How have you been?
I've been pretty good. The week has been pretty slow, I'm not going to lie. Not that many news have come up this week, except for the fact that we were able to finally get past through the midterm season. So that's done for now, but as we're furthering along the year, I believe one of our instructors has said that we're finally into the final third of the semester for semester students and stuff like that. I'm not sure how far you guys are in terms of your quarterly system, but I would assume you guys are also in your final, third.
Yeah, we're about halfway through.
Halfway through. Nice.
We finish up around first week of December, I want to say.
I see. I think instruction for us finishes around the end of late November, and it's just finals afterwards. But there's no more instruction; it's just finals, and then until you're done with the finals, you're practically home free.
Yeah, it's similar here.
Yeah. So as that's going along, everything else has been pretty okay. School's been pretty okay. Homework's been, I guess, a bit daunting. The midterms weren't that easy, I'll be honest with you. But, thankfully we were passed by it. But now I can only imagine how tough the finals are going to be. But so far I'm passing my classes. But I think what's bad about that is that I'm barely passing at the moment with C's and B's, with 1A. But I've looked at the percentages that each exam takes up, and it's the final exam that takes up around 50% for each. So it's either a make it or break it in terms of that final exam.
I see.
Yeah. So it all depends. It all depends on that final exam. And what's worse is that none of us yet really know how they're gonna conduct it for each class. Because sometimes for one of the classes, it's sometimes an essay or a multiple choice or multiple questions, but it's just a mini paragraph or maybe a long paragraph for each question. Or I believe for one of the classes, it's also been I think it's you're given 3 questions or even up to 10 questions, but you're supposed to pick 3 out of them, and you're supposed to write a 2,000 word essay for each of them. So yeah. But I'm also writing a whole ass a whole essay, a thesis paper, a research paper that I'm writing, and it's not easy. I'll be honest with you.
I get you.
But yeah. How's been things on your end, Jack?
I've been doing pretty well. I don't think I have anything grade-wise per se. A lot of the way it works at UCLA with a lot of these classes is that how would you say they kind of give the assignments, and you kind of have to they'll grade the assignments, but you kind of just have to kind of guess where you're at whole grade wise,
Right.
And there's not much knowledge on that, but I've done 2 midterms in a sense already, and my final one is due this week,
Right.
And it's a writing assignment, and just handling all that well, giving myself the proper amount of time to handle it all,
Right.
And I will say, in your case, obviously it's good to strive for the higher grades, obviously, but I've always lived by the thinking of that, C's and B's are fine depending on what type of C's and B's they are, if you get me. If you have a C or a B and it's because you've been trying your hardest, studying and all that, and that's the grade you get, then that's fine. But if it's you're just putting in the bare minimum, then it's if you could be doing more, then you should be. But if you're doing all that you can and that's still what you end up with, then in my eyes, that's still good,
Right.
Doesn't always have to be about the highest grades, especially in terms of college. A lot of times it's, simply about passing and progressing through your degree.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think that some people don't recognize, especially. I mean, if you do present like your backstory or as to what's like limiting you in terms of your work ethic, they could understand. But in my experience, usually, not most of the time, but just usually, like they see the minimum. They think that you're working just to pass the bare minimum, but you, along with all of your other hardships, that's just pulling you, just dragging you down. They'll just see that it ain't your best, but you're trying your best.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah,
It's a difficult thing, but
yeah,
that's why I say care more about, yourself than what others are gonna think.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
all like work to your heart's content, may you do it all for yourself rather than other people.
yeah, exactly.
Especially because, for the most part, it's like, what do those other people know? They're not the ones taking the classes, and they're not the ones in your situation. And,
Yeah,
like, sure, some people will try and say, oh, they're just trying to, like, help you out. But it's like, if you aren't in their shoes, if they're not in our shoes and, they never took that class, they're not taking that class, it's like, how can you tell me what's the bare minimum and whatnot?
right, right.
How are you as an outsider going to tell me that I am not trying hard enough or that I need to be trying harder to get a better grade when I'm the one that's doing all the work and this is what's coming out as a result?
Yeah, I think also what comes to that is the limits they impose on you, like how I said before that. They sometimes complain that they have to write, take up a lot of time just to grade your works, but they themselves are the ones that are placing these huge, minimums, like 5 page minimum essay or 2,000 word minimum essay. But once the students see those numbers, those huge numbers that they have to reach and come across, they have to, some students have to stray, or in other words, drag their stories or their essays just so they could reach that minimum in the first place.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, but yeah, I get what you mean. It's tough, but man.
Yeah. School's a very difficult thing, and, it's really a test of strength and willpower. But
Right.
for the most part, it has its benefits. It it is definitely a difficult thing to go through, especially with having to deal with, like I said, people like outsiders trying to have an opinion on situations that they're not experiencing.
Right.
And like some people, like they do it like genuinely and generously, trying to help out and give advice in what ways they can, but other people simply kind of go into it like too negatively in a sense.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, as long as we keep a positive mindset, everything should be Gucci, even into the toughest times. Especially with now what's going on, and even possibly going into more uncomfortable territories, if that makes sense.
I get you. One thing I will get into real quick is other than school, as you mentioned, kind of been slow lately, like in all aspects. It was, I believe, Saturday. Man, I don't even know how many hours it took. I just know we started maybe around 8 or 9 in the night and finished at about 1 in the morning. My dad, brother, and I were building like a closet for my mom.
Uh huh.
And yeah, it took us till like 1 in the morning, because like around like 12:50 ish, I went to go take a shower, and I got out around like, I want to say 110-ish,
Jeez,
you know? And like by the time I got out, they had already moved it into the closet where it needed to be.
Right.
But yeah, it was like, it took us so long to build a shelf. It was like, honestly, one of the most like laboring things, you know, that probably ever, because, you know, it's from IKEA, so it's like, you know, it's going to take not only a while, but it's going to take a lot of different tools and moving a lot of things around, making sure things don't break, making sure things are put in the right place correctly, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what took up the majority of Saturday night, and the majority of Saturday afternoon was going to IKEA and looking around.
I see. Anything else you might have fancied that from IKEA?
I saw a shelf or not a shelf, like like a dresser unit, you know, that I want to get, because like right now I have 2 dressers, and the only reason I have 2 dressers is because this one from like years before my mom didn't want, and so I just like was like, hey, I could use more space, why not just take it, even though everything fit into one drawer. I was like, why not just take the space? So, and then I saw this one at IKEA that was really cool, really big, and can fit a lot of different things, not just specifically my clothes. So I was like, hey, but it was temporarily unavailable, so couldn't get it yet. We're gonna have to wait to see when it is available.
Right.
And then I also got a lamp for myself, so that I don't have to be using the main light for when I'm doing art, you know, like especially like at night.
Yeah, I got you.
Got a little lamp for me to use for that. And that was pretty much all of my Saturday, really. Like, we got to IKEA about 1, left at about, I want to say 4, almost 5-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And we got home at like 6, 8, and then, like I said, around like 8 o'clock, 9-ish, we finally started getting to building the thing. So it really took up a majority of our day.
Wow. But I mean, I wouldn't think it'd be that too difficult, right? I mean, I understand there was the lots of tools and stuff like that, and make sure it doesn't break. But I mean, I wouldn't say it as difficult if I think about it.
It wasn't difficult. It was just a ton of pieces having to be put in together. Like, there was one point where, for the back of like the dresser, right, or the closet thing,
right.
We had to nail in, I want to say, about 50 nails. And when you only have 2 hammers, you know, that limits the amount of work everyone can do to like help out, you know.
Right.
And you know, when you only have 1 drill and 1 screwdriver, again, that limits how much work everyone can do together. So there was like, it took a while because there was a lot of points of you know, one person just having to specifically do it and the other 2 having to wait for that person to finish, you know.
Yeah, I get you.
So that ate into a lot of the time as well. And you know, not to move away from this, but it's kind of the main thing I kind of wanted to get into like today's episode is you know, during this week, I think we both can attest that we saw, you know, people posting about like going to different parties, you know, and celebrating.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it was Halloween. People were getting to the spirit, you know, going to parties, dressing up. But the main thing, like, I don't want to get into that aspect. The main thing that I want to get into that I think both of us kind of saw and like a lot of people are like talking about on like social media is that it seems barely anyone did anything this year. Like, there was a lot of like people posting about how, you know, the streets were empty, you know, like there wasn't even really kids out doing stuff. And, you know, you could attest that to COVID, sure, but like, you know, I think my main thinking is if everything else hasn't stopped people from doing things, you know, like if COVID hasn't stopped people from still like going out to like amusement parks and stuff. Like, why would it now be the reason as to why barely anybody was trick or treating for Halloween? You know.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like I saw like a ton of like just posts kind of like showing like, man, things this year really were, you know, no pun intended, dead.
True, true. I could probably go a little bit against it, not all the way. But yeah, I don't think anyone went out trick or treating because of COVID. And because I think there's been a bit of a rise of like people, who are, child molesters and all the bad people out there.
I mean, true, but I mean that's always that's just like a general thing that like people watch out for, you know.
True.
I can't say that that's a specific reason as to why like this year out of all years, you know, because like think about it, even like in previous years where like things could arguably have been worse, is like people were still going out, like 2016 when you had all those people dressing up as like killer clowns, you remember?
Right.
It was like people still went out for Halloween and like, you know, mass hordes, you know, but it's like the main thing I do get is like, you know, COVID. Obviously, like me specifically, like I fully understand, you know, it's like I haven't gone out in what's gonna be like 2 years because of COVID, right?
Right.
But like I'm saying, if COVID hasn't stopped these people from going to amusement parks like they used to, you know, walking the streets of like different places like, you know, Santa Monica and what's it called, like downtown and like the pier and stuff, you know, like all these different like, you know, public hubs, you know, it's like, why would it stop them from walking around neighborhoods looking for candy in a sense, you know?
Right.
And you know, maybe it is true, maybe parents are more weary with their kids, but I don't know, that just doesn't seem like, it just doesn't make sense to me, seeing as how there's so many people that have essentially just made it seem like we're out the woods, you know?
Right. Yeah, but I think it more like populated areas that still occurs. Like yesterday, during the night of Halloween, my parents and I decided to go to Glendale Galleria just because why not? They wanted to go out and eat, so I wanted to go, buy them something. But it was filled to the brim with people. Every restaurant was filled with like party goers and like costume people. So yeah, you're definitely right in the fact that people still think that we're finally out of the woods, but in reality we're still, even though technically the pandemic isn't much thriving as it was before, it still exists for some, unfortunately. But I just think people are just not caring enough at this point, which is that's why even though we were still wearing masks, other people, even with their costumes, weren't even wearing masks. Yeah. Aside from the obvious Jason mask, the Michael Myers mask, and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's why but it's like I was saying, why it just makes it hard to believe that an excuse for a lot of people not wanting to like take their kids out to go trick or treating, or why a lot of these other people like wouldn't be giving out candy in the neighborhoods, like the reason being COVID, when it's like you can't use that excuse and then like immediately right after go to some place, not wearing your mask or whatever, or like go to like some crazy populated area, or go to a party in like a super confined space, And like I don't know, it's like in a sense I maybe it's because because schools reopened, maybe they did a lot of the festivities there, and it replaced doing stuff on the actual day, who knows.
Right.
But even like the schools nowadays are still like in a sense limiting what they do, because they don't want all these kids to interact with each other in a sense, and like potentially have to shut things down again because someone gets it and now they don't know who they were in contact with,
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of a confusing thing this year because last year, the obvious, the obvious reason was it was COVID, because we were still like at the very like almost in a sense beginning of it, or like the mid phase of it, where we were months into lockdown, and so no one was really expecting to go out.
Right, right.
And it's just crazy to think how much has changed in a year, which, foreshadowing there of what we might discuss in a later episode, right, Dom?
Yeah.
But, it's crazy to see how much has changed in a year, especially in the mindsets of people.
Right.
Because like we both said, it's like there's people that just completely think we're out the woods, and it's like there's still sadly, I know we don't get into, or like we don't really like to get into topics like this because we like to offer an escape from the reality, but it's like they still have people who are suffering and dying in the hospitals, from COVID. All these different countries are still locked and like locked down because of COVID. Like I think only recently Japan finally ended like their lockdown in several cities, but like they're one of the main like countries that kind of goes into lockdowns a lot, like periodically.
Yeah.
So it's like, we still have all these different countries that are like, still in lockdown, some out of it because they handled the lockdown properly,
Yeah.
And then we just kind of have the US over here. It's like I can't even say it's split down the middle 50-50 anymore because it just seems like everyone fully like went back to like pre-COVID times, and it's like cool, your own life, go ahead and handle it, but like in this case it's like it drastically affects others severely.
Yeah. I think we're in current very troubling times, but we'll get out of it. I don't know when, but we'll get out of it at some point. But I just think, but I think what's going to be holding us back the most is going to be the people who are like anti-vax and like who are against the government and against vaccinations overall. As much as we want to keep going forth in terms of like getting ready for like vaccinations and like becoming better for ourselves, there's still going to be those who haven't even gotten the first vaccine at all. And, if the virus keeps growing and bad stuff keeps going on, it's just going to keep developing within them, which is only going to make it worse for us because then we have to get even like, the booster shots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of booster shots, would you get one, Jack?
I haven't heard any like development on it, so I'd be patient with it,
Yeah, I get you.
Like I patiently waited for when the shot became available to me the first time, so it would be like a similar thing where it's like once the opportunity comes and like all the advice from doctors say like that it's it's needed, it's suggested, then I'll go ahead through with it because I trust a lot of the science that goes behind it, especially because these are people way smarter than me, who study for years this type of stuff,
Right.
I'm not like the people on the internet who I'll do my own research and they read the first article they see and immediately stop trusting in medicine, but yet the first people they're running to is the doctor when they're sick.
Right.
And obviously there's a lot of negativity towards like those type of people that you like brought up and I'm bringing up, and I want to say in a sense it's deserved because it's like I said, they're making it a lot harder for the people like us who have taken it seriously,
Yeah.
like like I mentioned, it's like it makes it harder for the people that want to go back to living normally but can't because these people aren't handling it seriously. They never handled it seriously. Hell, our government never really handled it seriously. For all those months, they just let people still freely roam around as if nothing was happening, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I think we discussed it, like, at the very beginning, because, you know, when we started this podcast, we were, like, in the very middle of it, you know. We talked about how, you know, like, places like New Zealand, I believe it was, who was, like, you know, they had lockdowns, people abided, they were taken care of, you know, when it came to, like, their money, their rent and stuff, you know, the government themselves helped take care of them, and for the most part, they got through it pretty well. Maybe the occasional lockdown here or there, but, you know, places like there, and I forget, like, there's like a bunch of other countries that, you know, where it was like they handled it well, and, you know, when the airlines opened up, they were the countries that were allowed to, you know, travel back and forth within each other because of how well they handled it. And I think if you remember, it was like almost like a ton of countries were excluding the US from that list because of how terribly our country was handling it.
Right.
And, you know, going back to the thing about, like, getting back to normal, you know, you, as we've, like, talked about at length right now, it's like you see that in full effect with Halloween this year, where it's like, you know, an event that, like, one saw tons of people going out, you know, especially, like, think about it, since it was on a weekend, you know, you would have expected way more people to be out there from, like, you know, maybe even the beginning of the day, or at least, like, in the afternoon till night, you know. But the entire day, just, there was nothing, you know, there was nothing at all. And it's like, because of the fact that there's still a ton of us people who just can't get back to that point of normalcy, because we never even entered a point of going away from it, in a sense, you know, because of how the rest of society handled all this.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, it just kind of shows just how selfish people are, because throughout this, people were never willing to think about their fellow neighbor, you know, like they weren't able to think about the fact of how their own decision making can affect the many people different around them, you know. Like, when this all happened, not, like I said, I haven't stepped out the house, like, really much at all. Like, I go out, but, like, you know, it's like I stay in the car, you know, while, like, my mom and dad go to, like, the grocery store, right?
Right.
And, like, the only times I can say I've ever, like, really gone out and gotten down somewhere was when I had to get my laptop for school at Best Buy, both, you know, picking it out and then going back to pick it up after, you know, they did all the installation stuff on it.
Right.
When I had to get my new phone, because my old phone was basically dead at that point.
Right.
And, like, that's about it. Like, that's all I can really think of, you know. I haven't gone out, and, like, I haven't really seen any other people except maybe, like, a family member that comes over to drop something off, you know, quick hello, nothing more. It's like I haven't seen anyone, none of my friends, nothing, for, like, 2 years, simply because I acknowledge the situation I'm in, which is I have 4 people under this roof who are at a higher risk because of this COVID thing, you know, because of their own, you know, health history, in a sense, you know.
Yeah.
Like, they are, like, you know, I won't get into too much detail, you know, but, like, my parents are at a higher risk, my 2 grandmas are at a higher risk. It's like, I see that, and it's like, I willingly accept the fact that, yeah, you know, as depressing as it is, as much as there are times where the loneliness gets to you and you really want to just see someone like a friend, it's like I suffer through all that willingly, because I can't imagine having to be the reason that one of those 4 people gets sick, you know?
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine that weighing on my heart, and yet here are people just selfishly going out because they only care about themselves, you know? Like, you brought up the people who, like, won't wear masks or won't get the vaccine. It's like, sure, you know, go ahead, whatever, free will, whatever, it's your freedom of choice, you know? But it's like, it affects other people too, and that's what they're not thinking of, you know? Like, go ahead, have the freedom to not wear a mask or not, but, you know, you should at least have the courtesy. You should at least be courteous enough to think about and respect other people's choices, you know?
Yeah.
Like, those people who get mad at other people for wearing a mask, it's like, why does it bother you? They're doing their best to not only protect themselves, but anyone else, you know?
Yeah. I think, well, when it comes to all that stuff, I think also what comes from it is like superstition and stuff like that. When people start to make up lies and stuff like that just to convince themselves over something that is obviously not true, but try to make it true. Like when they go outside and they I don't know, some stupid example. Let's 5G. Remember 5G networks? That stupid stuff. That like might give them like an incentive, like 5G is gonna protect me, so I don't have to go wearing a mask outside, so I'm protected. Or some people might think it's bad, it's because there's 5G and networks out there, I have to stay indoors and ignore that stuff. Or like they might see a person of Asian descent and immediately attack them or go against them because they think they have the virus with them.
Yeah, or the people that think they're getting chipped,
Yeah.
Like, see, that's the most dumbest, like, argument I've ever heard, because it's like, one, what makes you think you're so important that the government would want to chip you,
Right.
And two, do they not realize that through their own cell phone that the government basically knows their location at all times, can, like locate them easily and stuff like that? It's like they don't even need a chip, they have the phones, they have, they have access to all this information on us in a sense, it's like if they wanted, they don't even have to chip you to know like a lot of the stuff that these people are supposedly afraid of,
Yeah.
I could maybe get like the health concerns, like the people who had previous illnesses, or like going through illnesses, and like the doctors themselves even advising, hey, don't get the shot just yet, like kind of wait, or just kind of like just don't go out, in a sense, limit your time amount of going out, and like they how they were advising to wait a bit. Like I know one of my uncles was advised to wait because he previously had cancer, so it was like they were like, hey, it's not really the smartest thing for you to get it just yet, like when it was first coming out, and even like a bit after, they were like, just kind of wait a bit, limit how much you're going out and stuff. So it was like there's stuff like that which are valid, but then like you mentioned, all these different superstitions that these people have, it makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
But
I think what. Oh yeah.
Continue.
I was gonna just mention that. I'll just say it. That people think that they're like heroes in their own minds when they think they're going. They're rebelling. If that makes sense, like rebelling, like not wearing a mask, ignoring the health of others, and worst of all, when they attack others for doing the wrong thing when they themselves are in the wrong the entire time, and when everyone else clowns on them, but they themselves think that they're they're the how would you say it,
the hero in their own eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it really is frustrating, and like the main point of all this was just to kind of talk about how it just seemed like Halloween, other than from like like the older people. I saw like a lot of older people, like young adults and adults, like more so celebrate, at their own like parties and stuff, and like that. Then like I saw like anything for like the kids and like preteens,
Right.
Like that's my main point. Is just kind of like how it's not me trying to make people seem guilty or like me seem like I'm higher than anyone else, but it's like it really makes you look at like the weight, in a sense of like yeah, look at all these older people who are supposed to be more responsible doing all this stuff that in turn causes, I mean, it probably isn't directly tied, but come on, you got to think like there has to be some connection between the fact that look at all these adults going out and being able to celebrate Halloween, and then look at how little people all around the U.S. have shown that they didn't really see a lot of kids and like their parents celebrating,
Yeah, I get you.
It kind of just reveals an image of that, man, kind of shows you what was the cause of that, maybe, in a sense, And like I said, it isn't me trying to like seem higher than anybody, but it's just kind of me thinking, yeah, I think it kind of shows people, especially that are supposed to be older and wiser, really should be taking more responsibility in this current situation that we're still in almost 2 years later.
True. You think we're still going to keep on going for the third year now?
I honestly wouldn't be surprised just because of how crap the people of this country are.
Yeah, true.
Because like we mentioned, only care about themselves. They don't want to take into consideration others, they just kind of want to make it about themselves and don't want to think about the fact that, the freedoms that are supposedly being limited, whatever you want to say, it's like, think about, like I said, my main thing that I always think about whenever I'm thinking about, as to like why we're still sitting here 2 years later, it's like, I'm just like, man, think about a lot of those people that are still in that hospital. A lot of people almost since like the beginning, like I know there's some people like who are still fighting,
Right.
like they've been fighting this whole COVID thing for like a while, and it's like I just kind of think about those people and I'm like, man, look at all those people like in the hospital, not even just the people suffering through COVID, but like the different doctors or nurses. You remember, like, nurses and doctors having to pull like 48-hour shifts, with no break to help out these people, the patients themselves suffering. It's like, I just think about that and I'm just like, man, I'd take any amount of years, whatever it would take, just for those people to get back to a point of normalcy,
Yeah.
I like I said, I would much rather sit here in my house for however long it takes so that the people who are at a higher risk can go back to living a normal life,
Yeah, I get you.
But, just gotta have hope for the future as always. Just hope that things will sort themselves out, Obviously, I don't trust the people of my state and this country enough, to do that. It's one of the main reasons personally I haven't gone out as well, is that I just don't trust other people during this whole thing. But in a more positive light than what the tone of this episode has been, we just hope that things can get back to a point of normalcy and that all the people who have suffered throughout this can just hopefully get back to that point of life where things were obviously much better.
Yeah, same.
And that's all we can really hope for. And, there's no better time to have that mindset than with Thanksgiving coming up, which is often a holiday that gets overlooked, but you won't see any overlooking over here because, I think we both can attest that, Thanksgiving really is great because it's the one time of the year that more often than not allows us to look back and think about all the things that like are really just complete blessings in our lives. And it really makes you appreciate a lot of the things that are often taken for granted.
Agreed.
And here's just to hoping that time of the year, as sad as it was to see that not a lot of kids got to celebrate Halloween this year with their families, here's to hoping that, obviously not a lot can change in about 3-4 weeks now, but, here's to hoping that by the time Thanksgiving rolls around, at least it's better to a degree where we can at least celebrate with a couple more people than what we've been accustomed to this past year and a half,
Yeah, I get you.
But we'll close out here. I want to thank you all for joining us for another episode of Season 2 of the Rule 34 podcast. Any last thoughts, Dom?
Nothing much, Chief.
All right, so we'll just close out here. I've been your host, Jack, joined by my fellow co-host,
Dominic Castle.
I want to thank you all. for joining us for another episode. As always, if it exists, we have an opinion on it. Thank you, and we'll catch y'all hopefully with a more positive episode next week. See ya.